Good morning. I just wanted to give everybody an update on the events that occurred last Saturday, the 26th of October. First, I'd like to say our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of yesterday's tragedy at LAX. We also continue to pray for the healing and recovery of all officers that were injured in the line of duty last month. And we also pray for the healing and recovery of Deputy Hopkins. Talk about Christopher Chase, who was our offender of last Saturday. Our detectives have been looking into his background to figure out what was his motive. Still at this point, we have no clear motive as to why he took the actions he did on Saturday. Talking to friends and acquaintances of Christopher Chase, they tell us that he had a long hatred for law enforcement. We know that Chase was armed with an assault rifle and a semi-automatic handgun. That is the actual firearms. Those are the actual firearms that he had on Saturday. Chase also had 357 unfired .7.62 rounds. This was still loaded in his firearm, his assault rifle. He had a black bag that he was carrying that still had boxes of ammunition that was in there. And he had drums of ammunition loaded, ready to go, to include the ammunition there. The numbers correspond to the number of bullets. He was also wearing heavy ballistic armor. So I'm gonna give you a sequence of events as our investigators was able to come up with as a result of that day. We know the first 911 call came in at approximately 11:20. That caller stated that there was a subject at the intersection of Avenida Cesar Chavez and Broadway armed with an assault rifle or an AK-47. Said he was threatening citizens at that location. We also know we received other calls with the subject stating that call police and that he'd be waiting for them. The caller said that the subject was by the car wash at Avenida Cesar Chavez and Broadway. This was significant as there is a car wash at that intersection to the southwest corner. A sergeant and an officer were dispatched to this call. As the sergeant was en route to this location, sergeant asked for additional units. Sergeant asked for K9, he asked for our SWAT team, and he also asked officers for whoever had a long gun to respond. He also advised that he did not want any officers to approach that intersection or that subject. So we had one officer that actually was on top of Guadalupe Bridge looking to see if he can see the subject at a distance. What we didn't know was the wrong location was given out by the 911 caller. Subject was actually at Iron and Broadway, right to the south of the Salvation Army. So as officers were responding to Avenida Cesar Chavez, Officer Eric Martinez was driving southbound on Broadway. As he came upon Salvation Army, he did not know the subject was at that location. He's still thinking the subject is over at Avenida Cesar Chavez and Broadway. As he approached that location, Christopher Chase began opening fire on Eric Martinez. Eric Martinez then immediately stopped his vehicle, put his vehicle between himself and Chase, and exited his vehicle. As Chase was shooting at Martinez, Martinez returned gunfire. In the meantime, because he was shooting at his vehicle and there was subjects or people, citizens behind him, he moved out to his east to take cover behind other vehicles that were parked in the street. Same time, he was returning gunfire at Chase. We know that this is where he received his grazing wound to his leg. In the meantime, another officer arrives to the north and Chase begins firing at that officer. That officer exits her vehicle and takes cover. This is close to the Salvation Army. A third officer arrives coming from the south. Chase then turns and starts firing at that officer. That officer retreats and to take cover behind the vehicle. He is also in the proximity of citizens at that location, so he tries to start getting citizens out of harm's way. As Chase is firing, he then gets into Officer Martinez's vehicle, P69. He then begins driving northbound and starts firing at officers as he's headed northbound. At this time, one officer then returns fire at Chase as he is driving northbound. As he crosses Cole, between Cole and Lead, this is where he shoots Officer Matt Hannum in the leg. Chase continues to drive northbound past Lead. At this time, 3 officers come to the aid of Officer Hannum. One officer actually removes his gun belt, removes his underbelt, and uses that as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding of Officer Matt Hannum's leg. 2 additional officers then take Hannum, carry him into a building out of harm's way. As Chase approaches the intersection of Martin Luther King, Officer Danny Morales, approaches that intersection. He sees a vehicle coming with lights on. He is unsure what that vehicle is. He slows down thinking that the subject had already passed him. Officer Morales slows down his vehicle. At this time, Chase begins to shoot at Officer Morales. Shoots through the driver's door, striking Morales twice in the leg, causing a severe injury to Morales' leg. Officer Morales exits his car, and he's bleeding profusely. This time, Officer Melanie Carrillo arrives on scene. She immediately gets Morales into her car, and she drives him to Loveless Hospital. Albuquerque Fire Department happens to be at Loveless Hospital, and they assist with his wounds and help transport him to the University of New Mexico Hospital. Chase continues northbound to Griegos. Officers are in pursuit of him at that time. They are on the radio calling out locations. Sergeant Lockie ends up getting behind him. The chase continues westbound up Griegos. From Griegos, he goes northbound on Rio Grande. There's an art festival going on, and there's citizens all over the place on Rio Grande, and I believe just to the north of Griegos is what I was told. And Sergeant Lockie did a fantastic job advising not to pit the vehicle because of the danger of chase, and also because of the pedestrians that were at that location. Chase continues northbound to Griegos, where he comes to Ranchitos. He goes eastbound on Ranchitos down to 4th Street. He then turns on 4th Street and heads southbound on 4th Street from Ranchitos. 2 deputies are headed northbound on 4th Street. The first deputy is Deputy Hopkins. Chase begins firing upon Deputy Hopkins' car as he passes her. Deputy Hopkins' car then starts drifting, and Sean Lockie realizes something is wrong with Deputy Hopkins. He immediately pulls himself out of the chase and rushes to the side of her driver's side vehicle and realizes she is unconscious and in bad shape. He immediately pulls her from her vehicle and begins CPR on Deputy Hopkins. The second deputy that was with her attends to her, rendering aid as well. And I believe we were truly blessed the fact that she was right across the street from Bernalillo County Fire Department. They jumped into action. They immediately transported her to the University of New Mexico Hospital. As Chase approaches the intersection of Solar and 4th Street, he fires upon 2 APD officers. One APD officer attempts to shoot out the tires with his shotgun. Chase shoots at that officer, barely missing his head with those rounds. Chase continues to the intersection of 4th and Montano, where his vehicle comes to stop as it wrecks into a pillar at the gas station, Phillips 66 gas station of 4th and Montano. Our officers do discharge their weapons at this location. It is undetermined if the fatal shots or by APD officers, or if Chase took his own life. Our detectives will meet with the Office of the Medical Investigator this upcoming week to get additional details as to if he was shot, how many times he was shot, and the manner of death. We don't know how many rounds, and I don't think we'll ever know how many rounds Chase fired at officers. We do know that he was targeting APD officers or law enforcement officers. Our preliminary numbers at this time show that 6 APD officers discharged their firearms to either disable the vehicle or at Christopher Chase. After identifying Christopher Chase, a search warrant was conducted on his residence at 809 Walter. Prior to the search warrant being signed and officers going there, our detectives noticed a note on the door. The note was addressed with one name and a phone number. I know there was indications that it was addressed to Albuquerque Police Department. That is inaccurate. It was not addressed to Albuquerque Police Department. It had a name and a phone number. As mentioned before in my previous briefings, we did send a robot into that location, and it appeared to have what we now know was fake booby traps set up in that location. There was nothing of significance in the manner that additional weapons, any notes to the Albuquerque Police Department, anything of that nature inside that residence. We did collect, we did note that there were empty ammo boxes inside the residence, and he had made notes out to his friends. We do believe that he felt that this was going to be his last day, as he indicated to his friends and acquaintances that he was going to go, that there was going to be, this was going to be his, basically this was going to be his last day. He was going to go out. I want to thank our detectives who have been doing a tremendous job in such a difficult time. This was very difficult for them, as it's hard when you have another law enforcement officer that is injured, and one that was critically injured. They have a long recovery, a long process. Today, a lot of those officers, a lot of those employees who were involved in this incident will be doing a critical stress debriefing. And we will continue as a department to move forward. We'll continue to heal. We'll continue to be strong. We will continue to be vigilant, and we'll work through this incident. This time, do we have any questions?
Chief, you said that 6 officers fired at Chase to either disable his car or at him. Is it 6 officers at 4th and Montaño that last scene? Is it 6 that you're talking about?
No. What I said was that Martinez did return fire at Broadway and Iron. I also said that we had an officer that fired upon him as he's coming down Cole. So that's 2 officers. So there was another officer that tried to disable his vehicle at Solar and 4th Street, and the additional officers appears to be at 4th and Montaño.
You said that it's unclear whether the fatal shots that Chase sustained are from APD officers or from himself. Does that mean that he was dead from bullet wounds, or he did have gunshot?
Yes.
Did your officers fire at him before he crashed, or did he crash and then proceed to get out of his car at 4th and Montaño?
Our officers shot at him during the pursuit, and officers shot at him when he crashed in the vehicle. The only time he was removed or taken out of the vehicle is there was indications, or we thought that there could be a possibility that he was possibly had some type of explosive or incendiary device on him. So out of precaution, we used our robot to remove him from the vehicle.
I understand last Saturday was insane and police were obviously very busy, but we're just wondering why there was a delay in letting us at least just know that there wasn't a shooter on the loose anymore, just so we could reassure the public that they were safe.
A couple of things that we're looking into, and specifically more myself. One is you do have a scene that was very long. I mean, there was multiple scenes at the scene itself. My goal is to take care of this community. Since August 3rd, when the mayor appointed me as interim chief of police, I told him I absolutely continue and will continue to take care of this community. It's one of those things that the scene was very big. We had 3 officers. At the time, we knew there was 2 officers and 1 deputy that had been injured. We had multiple agencies trying to get everything set and taken care of. So it's not that we didn't care or we weren't trying to deliberately. We also needed to know what we were dealing with, and we also needed to try to identify the subject and to make sure that there was no other danger to the public itself. One of the things that we're looking at for the future is possibly do some type of push notifications through an APD app. Good and bad when it comes to that. When you do a push notification, if I have an active shooter inside of a school, send out a push notification. I have kids huddled in a closet, it's going to send off a tone. Now I'm going to alert a bad guy that, I have subjects possibly in this closet. Last thing I want to do is have a child killed as a result of a tone from push notification. I mean, there's things that we look at, what is going to be the best practice for the Albuquerque Police Department, and that's something I do as a chief to see how will I continue to take care of this community. By no means our lack of communication or lack of letting the public know was done deliberately in any way.
I know, but still, it was 11:20 when the first 911 call came in, and I don't think we heard from police really until 5 o'clock, I think was when the email was sent out. I mean, God forbid another situation like this were to happen. We can try and at least alert the media so that we can tell them that, you're working the scene.
And I understand that, but also en route to the scene, I got push notifications sent to my phone from certain news agencies that already had said active shooter at this location. So you, as news media, also have scanners, and you guys, and I appreciate the fact that you guys sent out those push notifications. We continue to try to do what's best for the community. We also have to make sure our community stays safe. And I know you as the media want that information. And I appreciate the fact you guys did send out those push notifications. You gotta understand, we send out an active shooter. I don't want to put the community in a panic as well. We didn't know where this guy was going. We didn't know where this was going to end. Once it was done, I think, at that point, it's just a matter of gathering all the information and figuring out what had happened.
Chief, will you identify that first officer that you're talking about that made sure that no one else came to that area? I think it's, from what we're hearing, it's Sergeant or Officer 23. Will you identify that person?
It's Sean Lockie. It's Sergeant Sean Lockie.
Can you talk, and you said he did the right thing.
Sean Lockie did a tremendous job during this incident. He did what I would expect of every supervisor. He took control of this incident. He advised for extra resources. He told people what they can and can't do because of the safety of the citizens and the safety of the officers. And he was the first one to reach Deputy Hopkins.
When your officers first arrived to go to Cesar Chavez and Broadway, and can you talk about first what kind of the overall plan was to try and slow that situation down? I know that there was an instruction not to approach him, and then when you determined that you were at the wrong intersection, can you describe kind of how the plan changed from there, if you guys still had any efforts, or who was in charge to talk about the way to kind of apply the same instructions initially to when you discovered you had new information and you had the wrong information?
I will in a sense. The sergeant made a great decision to advise officers not to approach a subject with a rifle. The initial information that we got was that he was Avenida Cesar Chavez and Broadway. Sergeant will set a plan at that point, take direction or give direction to the officers, and then they'll execute the directions given by the sergeant. What I will not do is tell you how that's done, because then we alert, a criminal of our tactics, and I'm not going to get into that. But original information was he was at Avenida Cesar Chavez. In fact, he was at Iron and Broadway, or Hazelden and Broadway, which we learned from numerous 911 calls afterwards.
Did the initial calls say that, were the initial calls wrong? Did they say they were at Broadway and Cesar Chavez, or where did that error come from?
I will again state, the 911 calls came in and we were told the subject was at Avenida Cesar Chavez and Broadway.
Now, Chief, in the days after this, we've heard from the police union talking about, the officers need better rifles, basically what the bad guys have. Can you comment on that? And Can you tell us about how many of your officers were at the scene with long guns as was initially requested?
I had several officers that had long guns. More than half our department has long guns or rifles. We continuously train those officers in the use of rifles and handguns. We have strict policy in regards to who can and who cannot use that or use that type of weapon. Officers also have purchased their own rifles. Not only does the department purchase them, but some want to purchase their own, which is fine. However, they have to go through our training in regards to using those.
But do you support that, though, to train even more officers, just given that, bad guys are, stocking up on AK-47s and whatnot? Do you support that?
Oh, we train our officers. We allow them. We have the training in place. We have the standard operating procedure in place for our officers to be equipped with rifles or long guns. We use them in our business. So I want to make sure that officers have the best tools possible to perform their jobs safely. And that's one of the things we continue to look at. How do we equip our officers so that they're safe, that they get home at night to their families? We could have very easily lost officers. We could very easily have to go put somebody's name on the memorial wall. And that's one thing I never want to have to do is go knock on someone's door and say that they lost one of their loved ones as a result of a senseless act like this one.
Chief, but just real quick, but do you believe that your officers are equipped to make sure that that doesn't happen? Are they equipped how they're supposed to be?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I continually will work on equipment. And I'm also always open to suggestions from the officers. We look at equipment, we train on equipment, we bring in and test equipment. I want the best equipment for our officers. They deserve it, and I honestly believe that we are one of the best equipped departments in New Mexico. Last question, any more?
Yes. John Hyde obviously left the start on the city on the APD. I mean, you've had a week to reflect now. There were many officer shootings statewide in the past 2 weeks. I mean, how lucky do you feel, or what is the sentiment of the department right now?
Well, I think we feel blessed, but if you look around the country at the type of incidents that are going on around the country, and our hearts and prayers go out to each of these victims. I stand behind our officers, I support our officers, I pray for their recovery. Not only our officers, but the officers around the state. Do I ever want any of this to happen? Absolutely not. But we as police officers have a very important job, and I believe us as officers, there are few that take this calling upon themselves to be police officers. They know the risks, and they put their lives on the line day in and day out. I appreciate the support from the community, not only here in Albuquerque and New Mexico, but around the country, who have called in, who sent their thoughts and prayers to our officers, to our deputy. The many phone calls, emails, text messages, it's just been tremendous. And that's what that type of spirit, or that type of support brings up the spirit of our officers. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.